Hey, what's up everybody? Prime22 here, bringing you another episode of the Transformers Lore Podcast. The Transformers Lore Podcast is the podcast counterpart to the Transformers Lore series. Basically, we talk about stuff that we don't have visual medium to make a video out of. Do I always have to repeat that intro? I don't know. I'll just go with it. But today we're continuing on with our Beastars Uprising adventure with Primax 209.0 Gamma. And this story is called Trigger Warnings. but yeah, let's start this story because this is a pretty it's a 40-page long story, almost 50 actually. So let's get into this. But it starts off with a murder. This story is very much sort of like in the spirit of old noir type detective films. And it starts with a murder. A builder, a micromaster, a female micromaster is dead. And the Maximal Security Force detective Wolfang is investigating. He finds that the micromaster sort of had a body change. You know, Transformers can change their bodies, sort of like the relinquishment clinic, I believe, of the pre-war days in IDW. But Wolfang finds out that this dead Micromaster had a body change, so he goes over to the nearest body change clinic thing, run by a Micromaster named Hotwire, I believe. And he talks to him and finds out that she planned to go to a bar called the Way of All Things, and he goes there. This is very much a mystery detective story thing, where you go from place to place, following different leads. He interrogates the bartender at the Way of All Things called Moxo for the name of the Micromaster, and it turns out her name was Twirl. And then he gets attacked by a Predacon who tells him to stay out of it, cop. You know, there's more to this than you know. You know, your trope-filled detective story. But yeah, the Predacon beats him up for a bit, then runs away. He goes home where he runs into a Maximal who was also at the bar, and this female Maximal explains that she was friends with Twirl, and Twirl was neutral with the Uprising, and she calls herself Venus, and then she asks him to stop his investigation. She explains that Twirl was a refugee from Voss after the Resistance took over Voss, and then moved to Iacon. However, Wolfang kind of tells that Venus is blaming, sort of explaining that the Resistance was after Twirl, and Wolfang can tell that she's just trying to lead him off the scent of the case. And then Venus kisses him with a virus, and then he pretty much falls over, and she begins to look through his memories and it triggers his Predacon form, because Wolfang is actually a member of the Predacon secret police who has infiltrated the Maximal security force. And he's pretty much spying on the Maximals while also serving with the Maximals, but ultimately he's a Predacon. Think of the punch-counterpunch kind of deal, where he has two different modes, a Predacon mode and a Maximal mode. But Venus looks through his memories and then leaves. But then sort of keeps a message on him, sort of intending to blackmail him for him to stop looking through the case. I don't know. He goes to the Maximal Security Force headquarters and talks to his commander, Aura. And Aura sort of hints that Twirl might have been killed by the Builders, and the Builders don't want people looking into that. And the Maximal shouldn't intervene. Suddenly the morgue blows up, Twirl's body melts, and an officer Sitrep dies, and his commanding officer, Lidar, is missing. Also, Strongarm, think of sort of robots in disguise Strongarm. Of course, this is a Primax universe, so it's not a uni-end Strongarm, but same character, essentially. Not same character, but same type of character. Strongarm is sort of like the main neural headquarters of the base. She's at this point an old, decrepit builder, and this explosion took out part of her brain, part of her neural cluster. So since Strongarm was my only likable character in Robots in Disguise, that I was like, aw man, really? But yeah. Wolfang then goes to the Mandala, the HQ of the Predacon secret police. He has a sample of the virus that he wants to get analyzed. apparently the Mandala was once the resting place of good old Soundwave, and the Decepticon Justice Division worked there as well, and ran an execution team. There are statues for Kaon and Tesserus. Apparently there was a debate after the war stopped being a fighting war and started being the gladiator combat. There was a debate whether or not to take down the Decepticon statues, but then the debate sort of stopped when the Autobots and Decepticons sort of became one group in opposition to the Maximals and Predacons. However, one statue was taken down, and that's Counterpunch's statue, and that's when Megatron when it was revealed that Counterpunch was actually an Autobot spy. In which case, that's when the Decepticons took down Counterpunch's statue. Anyway, Wolfang meets with Onyx Primal, who's his handler for the Predacon Secret Police, and they give him security for footage they got from Moxo. They use information to identify the Predacon that attacked him as Fennec, and identify him as a high-level resistance enforcer. Also, by the way, Wolfang keeps getting messages from Vampire for psychological evaluation, but he sort of just ignores it. He's called in by Tarantulas. Tarantulas is their chief chief science officer, and he wants to meet him. And Tarantulas is the one who made Wolfang his stealth armor, and he says he's interested in the case. And Wolfang is like, "Okay, I'll keep you in the loop." He has the virus analyzed at Predacon Secret Police headquarters. Finds it's made by a dude in a sort of warehouse called Sparks of Genius. He goes there and meets with the Micromaster Overrun, and he interrogates him, and apparently Venus, under the name of Elita, approached Overrun and made him make the virus for money. And Overrun says you can track down Elita/Venus through her upgrades that she made. So he sort of uses that information to know how to track her. Anyway, he goes into the Way of All Things and interrogates Moxo for more information on Fennec, and Moxo says that he's not part of the Resistance. He's a part of the Mayhem Attack Squad, which is a Predacon supremacy group. And all of a sudden, Fennec comes in and starts beating up Wolfang, and they fight. But Fennec gets knocked out before he gives any more information. But Wolfang kind of realizes that Fennec isn't part of the Resistance. He is Mayhem Attack Squad. He uses coordinates on Fennec to find the Mayhem Attack Squad base on the border of Voss and Iacon. He goes to the HQ, but then he finds Venus's signal elsewhere, overlooking the building. And he goes over there and he meets with Venus, and after talking, Venus decides to sort of side with him and explains that that Venus was interested in getting Twirl in the Venus is Black Arachnia, and she was interested in getting Twirl into their unit because she was a target master. And the thing about target masters in this universe is target masters are freaking powerful. They can harness energy from their own sparks. If you have a target master, you can fire from the surface of a planet to take down a ship in orbit. It's crazy, man. The target masters were thought extinct because after the Great War ended, there was something called the Target Master Extirpation, in which, because they were too powerful, the builders decided, alright, it's time to genocide all the Target Masters, so they started killing all the Target Masters, though apparently there are a few survivors. Anyway, the two storm the Mayhemist HQ, and they find that Tarantulas is working with them. And he explains that Tarantulas was the one who put in the fake information that Fennec was in the rebellion, in the resistance. Tarantulas is working on this Target Master stuff to use for his own gains, I suppose. And he also explains that the Mayhem Squad wasn't the one that killed Twirl. But anyway, Tarantulas is defeated and arrested and brought in to the Predacon Secret Police. But Wolfang still has the issue that he doesn't know who killed Twirl. And he asks Black Arachnia about Overrun, and they learn that Black Arachnia introduced Twirl to Overrun, and then he's like, oh, I think Overrun's the killer. Because Overrun apparently knocked over a box with his wings, and that made Wolfang think that that this was a new body for him, and that Overrun isn't a real name that applies to a winged type person. So he and Black Arachnia go to Overrun's place, and Overrun explains that he used the Robo Smasher, and if you watched G1, That's the device Megatron used to brainwash Autobots into joining the Decepticons. He used the Robo Smasher on Lidar and used him to bomb the morgue. He was once Overrun was once a target master called Surge, and he was partnered with Optimus Prime himself, along with Haikyuu and Apex. Apparently, Optimus Prime died at some point, and Overrun. Also, Haikyuu and Apex died at some point, but Overrun he kept in touch with other former Autobot leadership, and people related to them like Blur's Old Head, Hyperfire, and Haywire and Offshoot. But anyway, apparently the Target Masters had this ability with their spark. That's where they had their energy from, the spark. But the Decepticon Thunderwing found a way to amplify the ability of a Target Master by having their spark drain Cybertronians of life if they were near them. And that's why the Target Masters were massacred. While Black Arachnia wanted to bring Twirl into the Resistance, Overrun wanted peace because he knew that the Target Masters were too dangerous to have in society. And so he kept trying to get Twirl to stay away from, the rest of politics. The Target Masters need to hide, but she just didn't care. So he killed Twirl in order to try to keep peace, since she's a weapon of mass destruction. Anyway, they fight Overrun for a bit. He's defeated. Suddenly, the Predacon Secret Police arrives, and Tarantulas is with them, and Tarantulas explains that he told the PSP that Wolfang was protecting the weapon of mass destruction and wanted to duplicate it for his own means. And so the PSP believed Tarantulas, and okay, we gotta go stop Wolfang. And Wolfang's like, what? So Wolfang uses his contact with the Maximals to call in the Maximal Security Force, and then Overrun runs, he flies on Black Arachnia, who has an aerial alt mode, and they fly over to Overrun while the Maximals and Predacons just start going at each other in Iacon and Voss. I guess this is more Iacon, because Overrun's flying towards Voss, but this huge battle breaks out. Maximal versus Predacon. Finally, Overrun is cornered by Wolfang and Black Arachnia and Tarantulas. And Black Arachnia, in order to stop Tarantulas, lets out a signal on her resistance frequency that causes the Maximals to detect the resistance frequency, and they just start firing mortars into the area. And Tarantulas is sort of brought down by that. Voss and Iacon become a war zone. Wolfang calls Aura and tells her that no matter what she hears, he was a Maximal all the way to it. He's been injured through all this, by the way, and is sort of bleeding out. And he decides that this is the end. He tells Aura that no matter what she hears afterwards, he was a Maximal all the way to his spark, is what he says. Overrun just wants to die. He just walks into the middle of the battlefield just saying, "I'm coming, Haikyuu, I'm coming, Apex," referencing the partners he's had who died over the years, his comrades. And while Voss and Iacon burn, Wolfang just smokes a cigarette and drinks some rough NGEX and then just bleeds out to death. And that's where it ends. A very happy story, I assure you. But that was, trigger warning, a very noir-inspired story. I read all the dialogue in Max Payne's voice. But yeah. This was a longer episode, so I'll just end it here. Thank you guys so much for listening. Subscribe if you like and have not yet. Follow me on social. Check out the social media links in the description below. And have a good day, ladies and gentlemen.